headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
I'm good. How are you?
There he is. There's my man. I'm good. Welcome. Have you sorted Valentine's Day, Leroy?
Absolutely.
See, Mrs. L's going to be fine. Leroy, let's get straight to it. Before we talk about what the new commissioner will have to face, over the weekend reports that there's a degree of argument already between Home Secretary Priti Patel and Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan saying, you need to understand, the cultural issues in London. What's your take on that, my friend?
I think there needs to be some cultural understanding of what the various groups in demography of the country, because there's so many different nuances and how you build partnerships, how you understand the get the best out of it. Because remember, policing is a relationship, it's a partnership. It's not something you can stop and search your way through or arrest your way through. So there needs to be an understanding of why police do certain things and how they do it, and vice versa, why communities perceive police in a certain way. And so that those sort of things build trust and confidence. And the cornerstone of police legitimacy is trust and confidence.
Sure.
And unfortunately, we saw that Cressida Dick lost trust and confidence, especially in the black community and certain female groups as well.
Interestingly, actually, there's an article in the paper this morning. It says Met racism got worse under Cressida Dick. Black officer's former leader says, this is Janet Hills, a former detective sergeant, said that the outgoing commissioner treated racism in the force as something in the past and had been defensive and dismissive when concerns were raised. What's your take on that, Leroy?
Well, I saw that firsthand. I had a couple of meetings with Cress at Scotland Yard, and she's in a case of denial. She wasn't really open to, well, there is a problem still, whether it's on institutional racism or institutional sexism, and everything is fine. Or I don't recognise that. It's not something that I recognise. But she worked with me in the sort of early O's, 2000, 2001, during the McPherson report, rolling out the recommendations for internal, recruitment, retention, and progression, and also service delivery, investigations, and stop and search, etc. So she was very much immersed in it then. But 20 years later, she suddenly turned her back on those issues and didn't want to recognise it. And she got this sort of institutional defensive, everything she had to defend. She wouldn't open up herself to these things.
Do you believe that it was right that she went?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you believe, then explain something to me. I'm not a fan, and I'm not trying to be biased towards him. I'm on the side of London cabbies, I'm afraid. Sadiq Khan's got some... I'm sticking up for Priti Patel. He's got some front, though, hasn't he? If she's so completely useless, doesn't understand racism, presided over a toxic culture, doesn't understand, diversity and all of that, why did he give her a new contract, then?
Well, that was mainly the Home Office gave her the contract.
Was it? Why didn't he object to it? Why did Priti Patel give her a contract?
I think political expediency.
Yeah.
And also, he got his feathers really sort of ruffled by Priti Patel when Sadiq came out and said he didn't like how Cress defended the policing of Sarah Everard's vigil. And because he said he thought it was terrible. And as a result of that, he got a lot of heat from that. So he had to step back. And I think also he didn't like the fact that after the cousin's conviction for the kidnapping, rape and murder of Sarah Everard, the plan was that women and girls had to challenge officers to ensure that they were police officers, either get their radio and speak to the control room, or go and get a bus if one's running and speak to a bus driver's radio. And the ineptitude and the unpracticality of that suggestion and risk that was put to, women and girls to do that, it would just defied logic. And I think it felt like a bit of a back of the fag packet type strategy.
Well,
I
have to say, we're watching pictures of the Met Police and how they dealt with the Sarah Everard vigil and other things. And there's no doubt, for me, just my opinion, there is a new broom needed. What I'm interested in, I'm not really interested, and I know you'd agree with me, that the arguments and the who's to blame between Priti Patel and Sadiq Khan, they need to get their stuff and their houses in order, and they need to face up to the fact that we need a new commissioner in the Met Police who has to change round not only the public perception but toxic culture in the Met Police force, and that's an absolute fact. That's what they need to do. What are the key things, if you were applying for this job, or the people that are being considered, what are the main key issues, Leroy, that the incoming commissioner will face from day one?
Morale, building back up morale. Because I know there's certain rank and file officers who really feel slighted by the fact that she was, she jumped before she was pushed. So, you've got to build back morale. You've got to let people know that there is a new emphasis, and we're going to acknowledge that there are systemic failures. And because the narrative is very important, when there's a change in narrative. And I actually saw that again during the Black Lives Matter era after the George Floyd killing. And Neil Basu, who was the Assistant Commissioner of Specialist Operations, he was head of national terrorism as well. He wrote some very thoughtful pieces saying that the Met had got things wrong and things could be much better. And, Cressida Dick didn't like it.
Let me read this to you, David Perry, because Leroy, you know the way I am. I want to hear what people think. He says, I know the agenda has moved on, but I listened to Ken Marsh with you just last week and other policemen regretting Cressida Dick's dismissal on Friday, yet virtually every other commentator said it was a good thing. It appears the Met are a happy little club, unconcerned about public opinion and what's right and wrong. Well, how would you respond to that?
I'd agree. I agree. That's what I said. That there's this real denial that, that the path they've charted and where that was set by Cress was, they're happy with it. And they weren't really understanding that there are wider constituents in the public who fear police, and them going through this really strong enforcement rule, and everything was enforcement. And if there was an issue, whether someone's been roughed up, and let me add, it's the minority of officers who are these rogue ones.
That's the other thing that I think we need to make the point. I think we need to, Leroy, we need to make the point. There are 32,000 people in the Met. I take the criticism of Cressida Dick. I read that she said there are 35 senior officers below me. Well, deal with them, sack some of them, move them along. But I do think that one of the big sadnesses is that a lot of very talented men and women in the police force must feel slighted and tainted by what's gone on, which is genuinely unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, I understand. But, there is also this issue, and I think it was brought up by Charing Cross report, Operation Houghton. Yeah. Remember, I served at Charing Cross between 2000 and 2004, and how this toxic environment of fear, the culture of fear, that whistleblowers didn't feel confident speaking up out against these minority of rogue cops who were sexist, racist, Islamophobic, everything you could think of. And, domestic violence, in every conceivable way, they were a letdown to the organisation. And the checks and balances was not there to say for the good cops to even challenge the bad cops, because that fear, and that perpetuates these systemic failures. And again, it started in 2016 before Cress started, but it continued in 2018. So it seems like certain units, certain departments are like safe havens of predator racists or sexists.
Okay, listen, Leroy, always a pleasure, and I mean that. We're on 7:30. I'm going to say thank you very much.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.